This is my journey. Inspired one story at a time, a library of leaders was created. It began as a journey to learn. As time went on, it began to grow. All it needed was a platform, and this podcast was created to listen, to inspire, to share. I am a storyteller, and this is my journey. Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. I am your host, Steve Anderson, and today our guest is Dr. Michael Mayrsohn, who was raised in a household where discussions about private practice in physical therapy was routine. He graduated from Syracuse University's Whitman School of Management in 2008 and earned his Doctorate of Physical Therapy from Stony Brook University in 2012. Michael is board certified in orthopedics and holds extensive training as a manual therapist. He joined Metro Physical and Aquatic Therapy in 2014 as a staff therapist at the Garden City office. At that time, Metro operated 5 locations with fewer than 50 employees. Today, Metro has expanded to 45 locations with over 700 employees and 400 providers, establishing itself as one of the largest private practices in the region. Since assuming the role of CEO in 2016, Michael's leadership has guided Metro through 25 acquisitions and the opening of 15 Denovo locations since 2017. Recognizing the importance of strong leadership, he launched an emerging leadership program in 2019 aimed at nurturing leaders within the organization. The ongoing program spans over 1 year with an average class size of 30 participants. Michael envisions Metro becoming a top-performing PT company nationally and aims to be an influential leader in the field. Michael, welcome to the program. It's great to have you on today.
Thanks, Stephen. Very, very honored and proud to be here.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you because you've got quite a story. So let's go ahead and start with a little context first, so people know where you came from. As we said in the intro, you grew up in a physical therapy family, and your mother started the practice that you currently are the CEO of. So tell us a little bit about how that started, why you decided to be a PT, and then when you joined the organization.
Absolutely. So I had no influence over my mom wanting to be a physical therapist, and actually growing up, I did the opposite of what she wanted. I wanted to do everything but physical therapy. I went to a business school. I wanted to work on Wall Street. Had a few internships. Absolutely hated being behind a desk, being in an office. I was always active my entire life, and having a mother who was a physical therapist. Every time I got injured, I always had the top therapist in her practice always work and rehab me. But it wasn't until I did a capstone project at Syracuse where I realized that the business of physical therapy was exactly what I wanted to do. And sure enough, I was able to take a year off after graduating Syracuse to take all my post-bac prereqs. And back when I applied, it was very competitive. The demand was very, very high back then, and you needed like a 3.740 to get into school, which I did not have at Syracuse. But because I took a year off, I was able to get a 4.0 and got into almost every school that I applied to. I am so happy I did. And it's the business background really helped.
So you come back and did you join your mom's company right out of the get-go, or did you go somewhere else for a little bit?
I tortured her. I did not join her practice. I lived in the city with a buddy of mine for 2 years. I had a mentor, graduated school. I was very into manual therapy. So I found a mentor in New York City who was a certified manual therapist, OCS, a neuro certified specialist. And I worked for him for a full 2 years. Did not work in my mother's practice at all. I didn't even do coverage, believe it or not. And then 2014, she had to get onto an EMR, and she was completely clueless how to use an EMR in her practice. So I at that point, I said okay, moved to Long Island, and the first thing I did was I got her onto an EMR system.
That's great. Now, before
Yeah.
we get too far down that road, I want to go back because you had a clinical internship in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. Come on, is that right? How did you get that? And that had to be a nice experience.
Yeah. So the one great thing about Stony Brook is they allowed you to do an affiliation anywhere, even if they didn't have a contract. Um, and I saved my final two orthopedic rotations for 3 and 4. So I was able to secure a contract at Steamboat, at the hospital on the mountain. Um, and I skied 25 days out of I was probably there for three months, so 90 days. And I'll never forget, they had the biggest snow dump in Steamboat history. They shut down the office, not because there was too
Oh,
much
wow.
snow, because everyone wanted to go skiing.
That's awesome.
It was an amazing experience.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so now you have joined your mom's practice, and at that time there were 5 clinics, and you helped her get the EMR going, and then joined as a staff therapist. So um, it wasn't too much longer that then you took on a bigger role. So tell me how that transitioned.
So yeah, the one thing that the EMR did, it allowed us to see data because she was on paper. She had no data, right? She couldn't run any real KPIs and reports. So once we were on an EMR, it allowed us to see the current staff she had. They weren't productive. So we were able to use, the information from our EMR to make changes. And ultimately, those changes led to us being more efficient. And it really started my journey as a leader, because without this data, a therapist, they didn't know how well they were doing.
Right.
So it definitely was one of the main things that allowed me to really start being a leader within her practice, because I
Okay.
introduce a whole new way of managing a schedule.
Yeah, and so that she started her practice in 1984, I believe. Is that right?
Mhm.
Okay.
82. Yep, yep.
82.
Yeah,
And
close enough.
tell us her name so those who might be listening may know her.
Sherry Glasser Mayrsohn. So her
Okay.
maiden name is what people know her as,
Yeah.
Sherry Glasser.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, when I was applying to school, everybody knew, everyone knows her on probably Long Island, New York area. She's an OG in the profession, similar to you. And it was an amazing experience going through school with her as your mom, because
Yeah.
we would read, literature, and she would be on it, which would be,
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome. Well, and I've met her and I know her a little bit and she's a fireball. So there's I'm sure those early days when you were kind of coming into this more leadership role and she'd done it this way all these years, I'm sure that was a bit of a contentious
mhm.
relationship and something you guys had to work on.
Yeah, she was my first mentor, to put it bluntly, right? So growing up with her, as the entrepreneur, as the owner, it really gave me an understanding of how someone runs a business. And not to say I love her to death, but she ran the business from her, it was all about her making sure everything was done properly. She did not have a strong group of managers running the business. And that was the first time I realized, once I was in the business, that, you can't scale it the way that it was being run.
Yeah.
But it was a great experience having her, as a mother, as a mentor growing up for, 38 years of my life.
So now were you given the role as CEO formally, or did you just kind of, you know, evolve into that? Because at some point, with 5 clinics, not super growth oriented. Now you come in with your business background and degree, and you want to grow this thing and scale it. So how do you do that? Was she tough to bring along that way, or was she all for it?
Yeah, so it's funny. I didn't call myself CEO probably until maybe 2 years ago, and it wasn't until we got to enough scale where we were really making job titles. So back then, I think my title was just director. We had a director of each location. I became the director of the Garden City location, but um, ultimately, I really just helped make the offices more efficient. And I got every director together to work on a plan to enhance her strategy, which was, multi-specialty in every location. That's what she was famous for, having a pelvic floor. I mean, she was doing a pelvic floor physical therapy in, the 80s and 90s before it was even called pelvic floor. She
Yeah.
was doing aquatic therapy, and she was doing some great specialties that a lot of other practices did not do.
Okay, so now you come in this leadership role and starting to develop the company, and there's some things that you see that need to be developed, and one of them is you felt you needed a leadership development program to train your people. So tell us a little bit about what you were thinking about that, and then tell us about the program that you
Yeah.
have in place today.
Course. The one thing I did a lot was I read a lot. And a lot of companies that I read about all had professional management training programs. And it wasn't probably until 2019 where I felt that we absolutely needed it. I think we got by for a lot of years with me training every single individual that came into the organization. 2019, I just felt we had 10 locations at that time. We weren't able to source enough talent externally. So I really made a push to make sure that we had a training program officially for directors and managers within the company. I led my first retreat in 2019. I didn't even know what a retreat was. I Googled it, and we had our fifth annual leadership retreat this past May, and I pulled up photos of it, and it was truly an amazing experience for our 9 leaders to go through. It was my first time doing it, and looking back on it from what we have now, it was such an amateur program, but I think it was exactly what everyone needed. Most of those leaders are now still with us, and I think it was like the stepping stone each year after we got, more and more detailed within the program. So,
Yeah, well, like
uh,
anything, you start at a certain level, you learn and grow, you improve, it gets better.
yep.
But I think it's interesting and compelling to me. I commend you for the fact that as a young professional in a fairly new position, you saw the need to get everybody together and do a retreat. And I mean, that takes organization, and it takes a boatload of money. It costs a lot of money to go to. I think you go to the Pennsylvania mountains, right? And so
Yeah,
and
I'll
so
never forget the conversation I had with so back then, everything, me and my mom, we met every week, and we both had to agree on, any expenses. And it was funny. I was really trying hard to explain to her the purpose and the need of this retreat. I think it was like maybe $20,000 at that time, which was a lot of money, for us. And and it's interesting. That was a lot of the differences between me and my mom's management style, right? I really wanted to invest a lot into, you know, the staff, the managers, and yeah, I'm just very, very happy that we did it when it was. We go back every year. This past May, we had 75 people at our retreat. So we've grown by 7.5 times from the original retreat in 2019. And yeah, it's almost like a conference now.
yeah, well, it really to me highlights how, and I don't mean this in any way negative or judgmental to your mom, because what she did was amazing. She was a pioneer in private practice. She did some wonderful things, but I think she did try and do it all herself. It was all kind of, as you said earlier, it was all about her. And then you came in with more of what I would consider a growth mindset. And from a growth mindset that you can't do it all yourself. You have to surround yourself with people, and you have to train them, and you have to develop them. And so, the insight for that is impactful, which the numbers certainly show.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very thankful. That was probably the one thing that I realized now looking back. I had a lot of mentors, and I'm very, grateful for all the people that I surrounded myself with. And I think, it's not a cliche, right? Where you want to, people want to surround themselves with people that are smarter than themselves. I think that's one thing, but then it's also another thing to actually listen to them, right? Because I think people could, give you advice and all that, but really it takes a lot to actually do what your mentors are saying to you. So
Yeah.
I think I've always wanted to grow and learn. And I think being a physical therapist, we're not trained to run a big business. There's a lot of PTs that are CEOs of large platforms, and I think they've gotten to where they are from smart people around them, giving them great advice, and them taking their word, and actually taking their advice and executing it.
Yeah. And
So.
so you developed the leadership development program, which is great. And then also, when you go from 5 clinics to 45 currently, you need systems. You need, you just can't do it the way you've always done it. You need systems to support you, and to help with those systems, you also need an executive team. So you didn't have an executive team to start with, so now you do. So how did you build that executive team?
Oh man, we had nothing. I mean, 2 years ago, we had a part-time bookkeeper. Um, like I said, I didn't even refer to myself as a CEO. I didn't have a COO. I didn't have, any vice presidents. It was everyone had a director. Everyone, our highest level was a director, or, we had a billing manager. But, 2022, I was very, very fortunate, right? I met you, and you helped me put together an advisory board of amazing people. And I think one of the first meetings we had was, you got to start professionalizing the business. It's too big for it to run kind of on its own without structure. So, I think, you know, I now have, 6 amazing mentors on our board. And I don't think it was for that first meeting that I realized we needed an executive team.
Yeah.
And that's when really everything kind of started with, building it out.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think this is what really makes the story, to me, impressive, is that you, as a fairly young man, new business leader, basically said to me, I need a board. And can you help me build an advisory board? And so, to me, I've never been asked that before by somebody, and I think it was visionary. And you're exactly right. When you're running an organization by yourself, and you're out there by yourself all the time, and it's lonely at the top. You need some help. So we did put together a board, and it's an impressive board. I mean, the people that are on it, we meet 3 times a year, once face to face, and the other two on Zoom. And the group that we were able to put together are other people in the physical therapy industry, or physical therapists, that really enjoy doing it too, because it's exciting for them. And it's been pretty cool. So I get from your enthusiasm and from what I know, I think you feel that was a really good move for you as a business owner.
Yeah. I mean, and, we spoke about this before, why more practices or companies, they don't do it. And I think I don't know if it's the expense, if it's them not wanting to, take advice. But I think it was life-changing for me, a revolutionary for the company. I think when we formed it in 2022, we were half the size that we are now.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Well,
I
well,
don't
that's
think
another
it's
thing. You don't have to wait till you're 45 clinics to have a board or to have an advisory board as this is. So, I think, yeah, I think you were around 19 or 20 or 18. I don't know what it was,
yeah.
clinics when we put that together. So, again, in my opinion, very visionary and a very good move that's helped you get to where you are today.
Yeah. And again, thank you for, the wisdom and, the connections. I don't think the board would have been formed without you. So,
Yeah. Well,
thank you again for that.
Well, I'm right
Truly
along.
amazing.
I'm right along with them because it's fun to do. It's fun to, get these brilliant minds together, and it's fun that I get to work with those people too. When we meet, so it's a quid pro quo kind of thing. So it's worked out great, and I know that they enjoy it a lot. I
Yeah.
do remember that the other thing that not that we're trying to pat each other on the back here all day, but the other thing that I think that you do really well is I do remember one of those first meetings, and we said, you need a management team, you need an executive team, and you need a CFO, and that's a daunting thing. How do you find a CFO and how do you do that? And you literally found somebody in a matter of months or weeks, got them on board, got them going,
Yeah.
and there was some transition there, of course, as it always is. But now I think she's doing a great job, and so in other words, what you do is you listen to advice and then you follow through. You made it happen. We didn't talk about it for another 6 months. You just went out and did it.
Yeah, I think that's probably the one thing that I truly, um, looking back, I think I do best, right? I think I take feedback well, I take advice, and yeah, I think just having so many mentors, I just know mentors, and I've had some mentors that I've lost touch with, and I think it's because I haven't taken the advice that they've given me, and they just get bored, right? So I think
Yeah,
probably the most important thing you could do is one, have a mentor, but pick a mentor that you relate to, who you can actually, use some of the wisdom that you're learning from, because ultimately that's the whole, I guess, point of having a mentor. And
yeah,
with the board, I mean, it's like having six mentors at your disposal, and they're all amazing experts in what they do best. So I think if we didn't have the board, I don't think we could have acted so quickly in the CFO role, and vetting them, and coming up with a job description. I mean, these are all things that were done with the board. So
yeah. It's a fun thing, and I think again, I think you had great insight to do that, and it's proven to be a good move. And I also should make the point, it's not cheap. I mean, these are high level professionals that you're paying decent money for. And so, sometimes I think PTs are kind of cheap. And so, if you're gonna do something and you want to get to a higher level, sometimes you have to pay for that and be willing to pay for that. And you stepped up and did that. So, good for you.
it's ROI. I
Yeah,
think a lot of PTs, again, um, it's the business part that they don't understand, right? I mean, the money that we're spending on the board. I mean, one, I think they're doing it to not get rich. I think they're doing it because they want to help, but the ROI on the board has just been absolutely incredible.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about your style now. Again, since I know a little bit about the company, it's interesting to me, and I'll just preface it by saying, 10 years ago or so, when people would sell to a bigger fish, which you're the bigger fish now. So when a small private practice sells it, it was usually done with a lot of trepidation and a lot of, I'm not sure about this and I have to do this, but I'm not happy about it. And it's kind of a weird way to join an organization. What I think you've been able to do, what I can observe, is you have gone into these small private practices in Long Island and now in other areas as well, and provided them something that they didn't have before. And they actually come in really excited about joining the group and share and having more resources. And it's a much more positive uh, a celebratory type of thing than I can remember back in the day. Is that been your experience with the people that you bring on?
Yeah, I mean, we don't even use the word acquisition. We say partner, because truly it's a partnering. We've been very fortunate in our area. Reimbursement has not changed probably since my mom started. That's how sad it's been. So New York is one of the lowest reimbursed regions and the highest cost of living. So it's completely backwards. And I think after COVID, there's been a lot of inflation, a lot of salary increases, and a lot of these owners can't make ends meet. And we've been, the partner of choice for a lot of these mom and pop practices that are, solo practitioners. They may have another, part-time provider that work for them, but once they're part of the Metro system, their compensation goes up. Their work-life balance dramatically changes. They're no longer managing, their location. Probably 30 to 40% of our partners that we take on come from them recommending us after the transition.
Yeah, that's impressive. And these are all, I mean, you haven't lost anybody since you've partnered, right? They all, when they come on board, they stick with you, and then they're
Yeah,
part
so
of the organization going forward.
we lost our first one. She moved down to Florida, but she had a 2-year plan.
Yeah,
But besides that, yeah, out of our 25 acquisitions, 24 owners are still with us.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
impressive. So, and then when they come in, not only do they get help managing their practice, but now they have access to your leadership development program. They have
yep.
access to more robust systems. They have access to a bigger billing and collections department. And so, by joining your company, they have the ability to be part of something bigger that operates at a different level than they're used to operating.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that we're doing that makes it hard for them to do is all of the specialties, right? I think it takes a lot of training to provide, pelvic floor, pediatrics, lymphedema, aquatic therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. So we'll come in, bring them on board, and add almost every specialty that we have to their practice. So before, they're only able to capture, 40, 50% of the patients that call, post, transition, we're capturing every patient.
So
Uh,
how many practices have you purchased or partnered with? Uh, so this is we're recording this in just about near the end of June, so right around the 1st of July. So the first 6 months of 2024, how many have you added in that capacity?
uh, 7.
Okay.
We added 7 this year.
Okay, so 7 so far, and you're still got other things in the works. So how do you integrate those practices? I mean, it's one thing to purchase them and have them join the group, but now they've got to change systems. They got to do things differently. They got to get on your EMR. They've got to do things that maybe they're not used to doing. So how do you do that? To bring them on board so that they just aren't floundering, at the end of your
Yeah.
tenure.
I think the one thing that we overestimated, I think, is we thought that it would be much more challenging. It's not, because it's a small practice. It's one provider, maybe two. So we have a transition team of 5 people. 3 of them are therapists. So you can imagine these practices are 5, 6 employees. They're very small practices, and that's why we've been so successful with the transitions. We've done a few larger practices, but for the most part, even the larger ones, um, these owners are motivated, and within 3 weeks, they're pretty good. We've looked at larger practices, 4, 5, 6 locations, and I think those are the acquisitions that a lot of the larger platforms are doing. Those take a lot more integration. I think it's more risk, more time. We were able to bring on 7 practices within 6 months fairly easily, I think, because of the size. So That's our model that we've really perfected, and that's the model that we feel strongly about moving forward.
And what do
Uh,
those practices look like when they come in? I'm sure that you probably improve their efficiencies a little bit, but do they also grow in, in volume? I mean, are they seeing more referrals, and are those offices getting busier than they were when you purchased them?
Yeah, so I think they're only able to accept 40-50% of the patients that call, right? They're primarily treating musculoskeletal, a little bit of neuro. So if they're, a highly involved Parkinson's patient, a stroke patient, they're not able to accept it. We do a lot of in-home therapy, right? So there's a lot of phone calls that do come in for in-home therapy that, they just say no. So, us coming in, we're able to increase volume pretty quickly just based on the current referrals that they're getting. We don't even put it on our website right away because we're afraid that there's going to be too much volume, you know, uh, uh, coming in. So,
Yeah,
within 3 months, normally these practices are 60-70% busier than they were when we
yeah,
first brought them on. I mean, it's like night and day
yeah.
for some of these practices.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked so far just about the outpatient side, and that's part of your business, but you have an whole other side of the business, the home therapy side. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that and what it looks like and how that integrates with the outpatient side?
Yeah, so in-home therapy has always been in my mother's practice model, where a lot of her outpatient therapists would pick up some, in-home therapy visits where they live, by the locations where they work. 2019 was just very, very lucky. We partnered with an in-home therapy practice. They had 50 part-time therapists right before COVID. So it was like October 2019, brought them on board, transitioned them. We were able to actually convince a lot of them to come on full time, which gave us more capacity to see more volume. And then COVID happened, which, patients did not want to leave their home, they didn't want to, you know, make the trip into the office. So we were able to activate a lot of our locations into in-home therapy, jump off spots. So because we acquired this practice in 2019, we had 50, 60, 70 therapists ready to do in-home therapy during COVID. So that's what really gave us the momentum going into where we are now. I mean, we have 200 therapists now that just do in-home therapy. And it's a big part of our business, and it enhances a lot of the outpatient part of our business.
So there's a connection between referrals between the outpatient side and the home therapy side and vice versa.
Correct. I mean, doctors, I mean, we'll go into a new market, a new region, and because we do home care, the doctors let us into that office to do a sales call because it's different than what the typical you know,
Yeah.
physical therapist is doing. So it's a niche that I think a lot of practices struggle with. It's a different type of therapist. These therapists are not full time. They moonlight for, three, four other practices or agencies, right? So it's, you have to be accepting of that, right? So, these are not a therapist that are just ours.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
and I think that's another thing I think you're good at because again, a lot of my experience has been is more traditional PTs think, well, I need to hire this person full time and they're uncomfortable with them moonlighting, they're uncomfortable with them having a side hustle and whatever. And
Mhm.
I think, to hire people in the future and get the people you need, I think you do have to be open to those new ways of employing people. And if they, are also working for somebody else, that shouldn't be threatening.
No, and I mean, we love it. I mean, because those, per diem therapists that pick up a few visits wind up eventually adding more and more hours because they love working for us. And if we didn't make that initial hire, we never would have known what they would have done. I mean, we've opened new locations as well, and we've had home care therapists work now in the outpatient office. So from from a staffing issue, right now, staffing is very, very challenging. The in-home therapy part of the business allows us to really, pull from a pool of therapists that we wouldn't have normally.
In respect to revenue, what percentage is that in-home therapy part of your business now?
Right now it's about 20% of our revenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd like you to touch on is, again, I think you do something unique that I haven't seen before. So, um, the the size of your company, and especially let's go back, a year or two ago, when it was smaller, you had a robust marketing department. You had many people, on that team, which again, I don't see a lot of practices doing. So just tell us your philosophy behind that. And I mean, that's got to cost money too, to have that many people on your marketing team.
Yeah, so and I don't know if it was just something that my mother did back in the day, but she had her therapist market and call on doctors. And when I was, in her practice, I interviewed them. They were miserable. They hated it.
Yeah.
One of our directors actually, lied a little bit, said he went out, he didn't. And I asked him, why did he lied. He goes, I'm a therapist. I want to be in the office treating. I don't want to be doing that. And your mom scares me. So I just lied because it was just easier, So
Yeah.
um, it was hard because I had to develop a sales program and I was not a natural salesman. So in the beginning, we went through a lot of different sales reps. I thought, I even remember one time I'm like, I don't think it's going to work. I can't do it. And very, very fortunate. I stuck with it, and we found the right combination of people. And during COVID again, because we did so much home care, these physician offices were open to us treating their patients. So it was kind of, as we were building up into COVID, COVID helped our business tremendously. And we were investing, resources going up into COVID and during COVID that our sales department really exploded during COVID.
And how many people are on that department right now, in that department?
We have just under 10.
Yeah. So,
Um,
and the reason, I mean, and that's why I want to make this point, because I think it's unique and unusual that there are 10 people that are in the sales department of your PT company. That is unusual. And I might add, from what I know, what they do is they kind of do a lot of what we used to do back in the day, when I was doing that, which is taking physicians out to dinner, meeting them, taking them out to drinks, taking them to sporting events, things like that. Because most people tell you now, oh, they don't do that anymore. They don't want to do that. And I think again, you've proven that that's not true.
yeah, no, I think there's a new group of doctors now that they really want that. I think they've been, I don't know if it probably goes in cycles, right? So I'm sure there was a time when it was not really well received, but I think right now the doctors are loving it. I think another reason why we have the sales reps is we do so many specialties where a lot of these physicians don't understand what we do. So I think the average a musculoskeletal private practice is well understood, right? Oh, I hurt my back, shoulder injury, go to therapy. We're doing a pelvic floor, pediatrics. So a lot of these doctors don't know that we do all these services. So that's a lot of what they do is really explaining what makes us different.
And do you find that they're, again, it sounds to me like, are they getting into the physicians? Do they talk face to face to the physicians?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so are those physicians open to talking to a non-professional, a non-PT? Because these are more salespeople as opposed to PTs, right? So you can't probably talk the talk quite the same way a PT and a physician could, but Again, it doesn't seem to matter. It seems like you found a way to make that work.
Yeah, like I said, I think right now these doctors they want patients back, right? So a lot of the times these because we've grown to a certain scale, and I don't think it was always like this. I remember a time when I think in the early days of the marketing program, these doctors didn't even know who we were. Now we're pretty well known enough where we're able to leverage our name. Where there's really very few instances where a doctor would not want to meet with a sales rep. We do have our therapists obviously do, a lunch, a shadow with them, but the initial process starts with a sales rep, and it's been fun.
And then you're also doing things like having physicians come and speak to a group of your PTs that all congregate in one area and things like that, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. Matt Matthew, who's head of our sales team, he remembers me saying there was a time when we couldn't get one doctor to do a lecture. I'll never forget. Like he's like, they just don't want to do it. And I'm like, Matt, there's going to be a time when you're going to have physicians begging you to do a lecture. And kid you not, on a weekly basis now, he gets so many physicians that want to do a lecture. And it's just mind-boggling that, probably in 3 years, it's gone, completely, 360.
So they're
Uh,
actually coming to you looking for referrals as well as the other way.
yeah, I mean, we have, out of our 45 locations, we probably have 3 lectures a week at one of our locations.
That's
And they're
great.
marketing themselves to our therapist.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. And, I don't know when, you were leading your organization, if it was the same, and it might be a cycle now where these newer doctors that are graduating really have to work hard for these referrals, it
Yeah,
seems.
yeah. I think it has changed, and I think that is something that other PTs are seeing now too, where physicians are reaching out to them. In my day, that never happened. We had to work our butts off and do the marketing and whatever, but it's really interesting.
Yeah.
So Michael, if I were to ask your executive team and the people in your company, what's Michael's leadership style? What would they tell me?
Um, Now or a few years ago? Because I've changed a lot. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's
Yeah.
go both. Who were you and who are you now?
So probably 3 years ago, I wanted to do everything myself. I probably a little bit because that's how my mom led, and I kind of saw her do it for a long time. And now I am so hands off. I've really embodied when you hire someone to do a job, let them do it. And I let them make mistakes, even though I know it's the wrong decision. I think it's the wrong decision, and I could see it not going well. I've learned if you do it for them, they're never going to learn. If they do it themselves, they make the mistake that I knew they were going to make. And again, these are minor mistakes, right? These are not things that are going to hurt the company. They learn from it, and you're investing in them. And I think hopefully, and you can ask them because you know them, they would say that I trust them wholeheartedly when we you know put them in front of a project or a position to do that job.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say again, uh, you're younger than a lot of CEOs, and you've really evolved over the last few years. I think, as you just mentioned, you've changed and learned and grew from that, and now approach it in a different way.
Yeah, I think meeting a lot of influential people, seeing how they lead their style, it's great. I mean, I've just kind of, sucked everyone's information into me. And, I think I'm going to be different, in 6 months than I am now.
Yeah.
So, it's ever evolving.
So Metro, and tell us the whole name of your company now. Make sure I get it
So
right.
it's
Go ahead.
a Metro Physical and Aquatic Therapy.
Okay. And so you're at 45 clinics right now. Are you still on a high growth mode? What's your plan in the next 6 months and next couple of years? You're just going to keep adding places and expanding your geography?
Yeah, we're having too much fun. I mean, I love growing. We have probably 20 more locations that are in the pipeline that are probably going to open before next May of next year. So we'll probably be at 65 locations throughout New York, Westchester, Connecticut, Rhode Island. Um, and yeah, I mean, we have probably every other week, every 2 weeks, we have a new practice owner reaching out to us, wanting to partner. So that's really how the growth, it happens so fast because we can have a partner reach out to us next week. They can be within our system in 6 weeks. I mean, we move very, very quickly, and the projected location a number changes
Yeah.
on a monthly basis. So
And I think it's okay to say too that your mom is gradually exiting the company, and you're going to take it over, and she's going to enjoy her retirement years without having to worry about the company.
yeah, I could probably do a lecture on that at
Yeah.
PPS, what it's like working with, a parent and taking something that was her baby and now changing it into my baby, and it's still her baby, but it's different. And we've had, I mean, over the decade that I've worked with her, we've been to therapy together. I mean, we've had a great relationship, a rocky, there's been ups and downs through our tenure working together. But yeah, I mean, she's now exiting slowly. She has not been involved operationally for a few years, and she's super happy, super proud of, her son, her legacy. Um, and yeah,
Yeah.
her name, Metro, was founded, 42 years ago. So
Yeah, and what a great family story to have that legacy continue with that name and have you in charge. So now I think you said earlier you're 38 years old, right?
38 in 2 weeks. Yep.
Oh, you're only 37 years old. Okay.
37.
Well,
Yep.
by the
Yep.
time this is published, you'll be 38.
Yep.
But I just want to point out too that you're running this big company. It's growing crazy. It's all these things are going, and you have three boys under the age of what?
3.5.
So three boys under the age of 3.5. Oh my gosh. So you got a busy life. You're dealing with all of their stuff and family, but it's doable. So how do you do it? How do you keep that balance without being gone all the time?
So, I think COVID again changed how we operate. And, all of our three kids were born after COVID. And I'm very, very lucky that I've invested in this management team. And the management team's been with me for, 8 or 9 years. And I think they want me to, they're working hard. And treat them well. And it allows me to be able to be with my family on most days. And you know, I saw how my mom ran her practice, and it was different. She was always on the phone. She wasn't at, a lot of my sporting events. And I was trying to figure out, building this business, how to do it. And I think during COVID, it gave us the excuse to kind of do it, and it's accepted. And yeah, it's just been great. And I do miss being a treating therapist, though. I do.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
that's a hard thing to
yeah,
give up, and
yeah,
a lot of us went through that. It's you train
yeah,
so hard and you study so hard, and it's hard to give it up, but
yeah.
you kind of have to when you get to your level, that's for sure. But I mean, it's interesting because I think that you've adopted the getting that executive team together and trusting them and letting them do their thing. And again, my left field observation is that you're not a 120-hour a week guy. You're there and you're supportive and you're working with your team and whatever. But if you trust them and let them do what they want, then you don't have to work those crazy hours.
It's exactly right. Exactly
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, Michael, in anticipation of our discussion today, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to be sure and get in the program?
You're so thorough with these questions. I mean, I think we covered a lot of great territory.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, as you know, because I know you've listened to a few of these episodes yourself, so I always ask the same common question at the end of the interview. And that question is, in relation to leadership, what is a pearl of wisdom that you could leave us with today?
I think it's well what we spoke about. Surround yourself with smarter people and take their advice and actually do it. It's really worked for me. And I have two younger brothers. One's a physician, the other one's a social worker. Both are in private practice, and that's the one thing that every time we speak about their practice, that's what I say. They all have mentors, and they're all in a good spot. So I think listening to your mentors is probably a pearl that many people might know it, but I think it's one thing to actually do it. So
Yeah, and I think it's a recurring theme too that we've talked a lot about in this time we've had together is just, not only listening to your mentors, but being willing to go out and find mentors. And I know you're not afraid to call people and you ask
you
people
know,
questions and you get together at a conference and pick their brain and all those things. You just have to be willing to ask the questions and take in the information and then act on it. So
yeah, I mean, you won't, the worst thing they do is say no, and you won't ever know unless you ask. So
yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Well, Michael, this has been a pleasure. As people know from listening, we've known each other for a few years now, and watching you grow and watching you do what you've done has just been amazing. And I've so admired all the things we talked about today of your style, and you're going to continue to grow, and I'm sure you're going to get bigger and bigger. So hang on, because the ride's still going.
Thanks so much, Steve. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, take care, Michael. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you down the road.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. To listen to all my interviews, subscribe to Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and many other popular podcast platforms. Some of these interviews are on video, and you can search YouTube for Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson. You can also access the entire library of interviews on my website, orange.coaching.com, and that is orangetheword.coaching.com, and go to the Media Center and click on Podcasts or Video Gallery. You can also enter the website from pilpodcast.com.